controlled. And so we haven't had much challenge from that. One day I was going to fly out of the airport though, and the fire to the east was just pouring smoke this way. And I'm VFR, so I wasn't flying instruments, and I just had to ground it and not go up. So
Jeez.
yeah,
Yeah, I was actually I was in Atlanta like a couple days after you and I first connected, and a lot of those guys I was meeting with had family down south, and
yeah.
they were like, "Man, we're just getting tormented down there."
When these wildfires happen, I'm always amazed, no matter where they are, like how many acres it is. It's like 12,000 acres that burned.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah. No, it goes fast, man. It goes
it
fast,
does.
but Trey, no, man, I'm excited to have you on the podcast today.
Just got to do better than Tommy. That's the goal here.
Well, you're up first, so
Okay, good.
yeah, I won't give Tommy I won't send it to Tommy, so
Yeah,
he won't know
give
what
him
we
harder questions. That's the thing.
yeah, I can do that. I can do that. But Trey, no, I got your book here. CEO only does 3 things. And I
That's it.
appreciate you sending that to me as I'm working my way through it. And man, I would love for you just to talk a little bit about your story because when we first met, my first impression of you is just you're very business savvy. You do a lot of deals, you do a lot of different things, you speak, you coach, just your personal career, you've done a lot of things. And I would love to know just kind of how all that started and have you always, I guess, had that mindset of doing deals and being in these high level leadership positions or how that all transpired?
Yeah, it's sort of funny. We joke about it in the family sometimes. When I was in the 6th grade, two things happened. My dad had a business partner, and she gave me a set of tapes back then, and they were Brian Tracy tapes, and the program was called The Psychology of Achievement. So every morning on the way to school, I'd make my mother put these tapes in, and we would listen. And they were fascinating to me. Like, how do people become successful? What goes on? He had a lot of stories in there, so that was good for a kid. And about 3 months after I got those, I listened to those things over and over throughout high school. And I even go back to that program from time to time. Now I've gifted it out to people, that sort of thing. I met Brian Tracy one time and told him the whole story. He was real thrilled about that. And then about 3 months after I got those tapes, the movie Wall Street came out, and I went to see it. And then after that, I was just so enamored of business. And like, I remember thinking, oh, you can buy a building, like somebody owns that building, and it was fascinating and intriguing to me. And for Christmas, I got a little briefcase that I would take to school and, stuff like that. So, super nerdy, but I was always interested in business and how people put things together. When I grew up, I went to took an undergraduate degree and studied history and economics. I did that at Emory in Atlanta and at Oxford in the UK, and it was interesting to see how those different systems sort of things that basically the guys teaching it had never done. So that was really interesting. And then I decided to go to law school and I was going to get this JD MBA program. So I went to Tulane, and I ended up not taking the MBA because the program rankings dropped while I was there, like 50 spots. And I went to see the dean, and I was like, "What happened?" And he goes, "We don't know." And I said, "Well, what are you going to do to fix it?" He goes, "We don't know." And I said, "I'm out, baby, because I'm not hanging around while you figure it out," which was probably the wrong decision, but I was so sick of school, I was ready to get to it. So I came home and, you do summer clerkships and internships and things like that. And I wormed my way into a clerkship with the company that eventually became WebMD. It was really early. And I was like maybe the 100th employee at WebMD, just doing deals, helping out, papering transactions when they needed to do that. And I got a ton of M&A experience in that basically first 14 months that I was there. We bought 70 companies, and I had hands on every one of those transactions. Now I wasn't leading any of it, I wasn't the chief, but I was touching all of it. I was just absorbing it. And so I really loved that. And then we had a family tragedy. I had gone on to some other work. I started a venture fund. That venture fund was doing really well until some idiots flew planes into the trade center and the whole world changed. And so I had to go in-house at a company called Earthlink, and then was eventually hired at AOL to do divestitures. So they had bought all of these companies over the years, and they're like, "We don't know what they're here for. We want you to come in, figure it out. The ones that we want to keep, we'll keep. And the ones we want to sell, we want you to run the process and sell these companies." Like, dream job for me. And I was sitting out front of my house in Atlanta, and the movers were coming to get my stuff. AOL had said, "We don't have time for you to sell your house. Here's a check." They had bought it, and the movers are coming, and my mom calls and she says, "Hey, your dad's in the hospital." They were in Las Vegas. They had gone for like the New Year, and he's in the hospital. And I was like, "Okay, I got the movers coming. Let me know how it goes, what you need." And she was like, "No, you need to be on a plane right now." So I ran to the airport. My brother had flown up. We flew out to Vegas, and 2 weeks later, we brought my dad home, but not the way we wanted to. So then I'm sitting there like, well, what do I do? I have my dream job, this life that I've created. I have this girl that I love that we're probably going to get married, all of this stuff, and she and it is there. And then I have my family business and my family here. Where am I pulled to go? And I was really torn by that. So I came home for a week to like help out what I could do. And it became clear to me that we didn't have a good succession plan. And I really sat up late one night. I remember it was Valentine's Day weekend, and my poor girlfriend had come down to hang out, and I was sitting there and I was like, my dad never told me no once. Like every time I asked him for something, it was, okay, let me figure out how to do that. And here's my obligation and here's my privilege, but here's my responsibility to do that too. And so I kept the family together. I kept the business together. I lost the girl. She moved home. I didn't go down that path. I found a new girl. That was good too. And I won't say better because that would be rude, but better for me, let's say. And so that's how it sort of all came together. And then as I was learning the business, I had a legal pad. And every time I'd make this big learning, right, I'd jot it down. And a lot of what I jotted down became the framework for the book, because when I consulted with companies, they would ask me, how did you do this? Or we want to look like you. And, how does our business do this? And they would say, like, we wish you had written a book. So that's where the book came from.
Yeah.
Ultimate.
Yeah. Man, I love that you shared that, and I'm not too far into the book, but I am on the first part of it where the word focus has already stood out to me. Saying no as is very important. As someone like myself who's not at that level yet, it's still it's something I'm enjoying learning because I envision that for myself, and I think that's a good. And I kind of heard you talking about that as you were answering that question. And it seems like everyone who is a high achiever or ultra successful, it starts at listening to tapes or listening to a CD or reading a book or just following people who have done it before and just soaking all of that knowledge in and then putting it into action and applying it, which is what you did and what all these others do. And so I'm glad that you say that because there seems to be a pattern there that is
Totally. I'm a
repetitive.
believer in it. Like, find a guru, find your tribe. That's the most important thing. The guru will always disappoint you no matter what, because they're human. But the people that are in that tribe, the people that are trying to do what you're trying to do, and you can lean on them, you can pour into them. That is what the human experience is supposed to be about anyway. And so, yeah, man, I believe that, and I participate today. I'm in 2 masterminds today where I get around people that are doing what I'm doing and I learn from them. I'm putting together something right now called the Buttonwood Club for people that are in my position as a family office, to come together with no vendors, with no outsiders in, but just people saying, hey, I don't know how to handle this issue, and it's a succession issue, or it's an investment policy issue, or whatever that happens to be. And we're just going to do like a 2-hour meeting once a month and those kinds of things, because every time I try to do that myself, I cut myself off from a lot of really good answers and influences. So if I have to form it, then I'll form it and do it. And then, I'll run it or somebody else can run it. That's not important to me. I just want to be in the mix with people that are smart, committed, and going through on the same journey that I'm going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I was kinda listening to a podcast yesterday too, and I think Kevin Hart popped up somehow. He was talking about meeting Jeff Bezos for the first time and him basically saying, like, "I don't need to pretend that I know everything. I need to go get knowledge from this guy who's built this behemoth of an organization." He's like, "I think that's the problem with people nowadays is you try to play it too cool and pretend you know it all instead of saying, like, I don't know nothing, and
Yeah.
go surround yourself by people who are smarter than you and can help you level up just by the knowledge they can provide." And I love hearing people talk about that, especially people who are successful because they're saying like, "Hey, man, I'm still learning every day. I'm
Every
not."
day. Let me
Yeah,
tell you what I did this year. You log on LinkedIn, you get all these contacts from people like, "Hey, we can get leads for you," right? Well, I don't need leads. Where we are in the business and my life, I don't need leads. So I was sitting there New Year's Day, and for no reason, I just pinged a guy back, and I was like, "Listen, I don't need you to make sales copy and book sales appointments for me. I want to have conversations with people that are VCs, private equity, real estate, private credit, the things that we do. I want to talk to those people, and I just want to have a conversation. So there's no sale. I'm not going to pitch them a deal. I'm not going to talk to them about anything except I want to interview them over the course of 30 minutes, like a really quick call, and I'll pay you $100 a call for those that you could put together. I've had 142 of those calls so far this year. And every call goes the same way. Like they get on the call and they're like, "What is this?" And I'm like, "All right, I'm not selling anything." I get that right off the bat. And then I just get them talking about, what are you seeing in the market? Tell me about your company. Tell me about your customers. What are you seeing? Was last month better than this month? That sort of thing. I'm going to do it for the full 6 months of the year is what I told him I would do. And I write down, take my notes. I have the recording, and then I have my AI system put it all together so that it's in this knowledge base that I can pull. But what it's done for me is really deepened my understanding of how dollars are flowing, how people are investing, where they see benefit, and that sort of thing. And then the other thing has been really awesome that I've been able to introduce a lot of those folks together as well. And that's been really cool. So like there was a guy that was super high up at Amazon. And he found out that at the end of next year, they're going to phase his business out. His business unit's going away. And so we were talking, and he just happened to mention that. And I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And he told me, well, like 2 hours before, I'd had a conversation with the guy that created that whole category. So I hooked them up, and they're still in conversation. And I bet something comes of that, which would be awesome. I had another office that I met. They were in Norway and super into alternative energy and green energy and all of that sort of thing. And it's not my thing. We don't aggressively place assets there, but I meet a lot of folks that do. And I'm just introducing them all over the place, which is really fun for me. So for $100 per meeting, it's been super worth it, and I'll probably be at K for the year, but I mean, come on, you couldn't go out and buy a network of 150 people in that way for 15K. There's nowhere you can write a check to produce that. So that's an idea for people that, if you want to expand the network, that's an easy way.
yeah. I was just about to say you're giving me a business idea over here on just being a connector. Yeah, but I love that you say that, and I try not to use the word networking too much because people kind of overdo that, but it's genuine relationships and genuine curiosity. And I was thinking about this too of like, yeah, I know in your book it's a little bit of a different meaning saying no, but when it comes to meeting people, doing things where you can get introduced to others, the power of just saying yes and going to shake someone's hand, asking a question, being around someone in a room that you wouldn't be able to normally. Just the more people you know, the more conversations you have, the more opportunities just
Yeah,
seem to magically appear just from those relationships being started and those
completely
conversations.
agree. In 2014, my theme for the year was to say yes to everything. Right? And every single thing I was asked for. Now I was specific, like I had to be asked, right? It couldn't be my idea. I had to be asked. But if I was asked, I got into it. And for a year, I said, I'll do this for a year. And I did it forever, right? Up until probably 23, when I notice, because I do an end of the year analysis of my calendar, right? I go back and look through every single appointment that I had taken that year. And I just ask myself, on balance, was this good for me, or was it neutral, or was it bad? And very few of them are bad, right? But I was stunned by how many of them were neutral. And what I realized was I was doing a lot of free work for people that didn't really appreciate it at the end of the day. And so I went back to those people and said, hey, this is the way it's been for us, but it's not going to be this way going forward unless some things change. And of course, they would get totally tore out of the frame about, oh my God, it's so, Trey's valuing his time all of a sudden. So there's an extreme on both sides of that. And that's why I went into this thing today. Like, I love having conversations with new people, and I love learning from them. And some of the people, man, if I tell you, Chris, like there was one guy, and I noticed his name on the calendar. I'm like, there's no way he's coming. Like he's a billionaire. There's no way he's showing up. I click the Zoom link. He's sitting right there, and I'm like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Like, literally, why are you on this call? And he said, well, I've been in this business for 35 years. Nobody's ever asked me for a conversation. And I came to see if you were full of it. And I said, well, let me be honest. Sometimes I am, but I don't have anything to sell. I want to learn. I mean, this guy is a category creator. He made $5 billion by seeing something in the market that nobody else saw and sort of going and plugging that hole and just owning it, you know? And it was a great, I was like, I wish I could take selfies on Zoom.
Yeah.
No, it was like I was fanboying on it. So I kind of from say yes to say no a lot more, replace that with being more intentional with who I can meet.
Yeah. And that's a good point. As someone like myself, saying yes means a lot more because I'm not to a level yet to where that balance has happened. I need to be taking in everything that I can. But I can see when you get to a certain level, time becomes a little more valuable in the way you've got to approach things. Uh, no, that's a great point. Hey, I was going to ask you a question around like M&A specifically, because it just seems like that is where the big money is and in these deals and just what's the process like of determining if you're going to acquire a company or if they're going to acquire you? Like how much work goes into that and how do you actually break down, is this a good relationship? Is this going to lead to prosperity for both parties? Like how do you actually work through the numbers and
So the
all?
answer to that is no, right? Because we know from like some of the studies that have been done academically and some of the trade groups, like 91 or 93% of M&A activity produces zero shareholder value,
Yeah.
right? So most of the time it is that case. And I've bought companies for myself and bolted them onto existing businesses, or I've helped out with portfolio companies. And we always start from that standpoint. Like, are you sure? Are you sure that we can't do anything to grow except this? Like if this wasn't available, what would we be doing? And I always push back really hard on that. Having said that, acquisitions are a great way to get further down the track, than you would usually be able to do organically. And so, and I know that there's a tremendous, it's not even a cottage industry anymore. It's a separate category industry and roll-ups now. They roll up everything. I met a guy 6 months ago who was rolling up laundromats. I'm like, they still have those? And he was like, yes, it's a fabulous business. And he's just rolling them all together and he's putting
Boring business.
technology, totally boring, but he's putting a technology layer on top, right? So that you can walk in and swipe your card or swipe your phone and the thing comes on. And then he's got all the, security footage. He's got all the stuff. He's really into it and he's going to do really well. Somebody eventually that free cash flow of that business will be big enough that somebody wants to own it for more than he paid for it. So there's that. I think I always, when I'm in counseling with somebody who wants to sell their business, I always say, look, we can't move forward until you tell me your number. And then they'll give me the number. And then I show them the financial rules around that number and they get brokenhearted really quick, right? Because if you're making, let's just say you make $1 million a year today as an income from a business, you say, I just want to sell my business and I want to keep making that $1 million, then you have to sell that business for a lot of money, right? Because all of the sort of Monte Carlo style analysis that goes on there is that you can touch roughly 4% of the principal afterwards. And so it makes people really focus on, oh, well, maybe I don't hate this business so much that I want to sell it. Maybe I want to get back into it and fix it. So we use the principles in the books a lot of time to do that. But sometimes it is the right time, personal circumstances, or, hey, I don't have a good succession, plan or something of that nature. So, the whole M&A circle and cycle is really interesting to go through in that way.
Yeah. And I get, and you're right. I hear like, VCs, it's like, hey, if one out of whatever works, then it was worth it. But it seems like everybody's trying to swing for the grand slam. And as long as a couple of them work, it's great. But it seems like everyone's at least trying to
We
go
get it
that.
backwards. Yeah, we get it backwards. So we think that the tip of the iceberg, the part that's underwater, it's integration. That's the thing that nobody does well. And we think that the tip of the iceberg is the hard part, like just getting the transaction together and, oh, we did the deal and now the deal's done. No, no, no. You just brought on a completely different team, a completely different culture. They use different tools and all of that. And honest to God, man, there are not 15 companies in the world that do integration well. And think about that. I mean, If I'm wrong by a factor of 2. So there's maybe 30 companies in the world that do it really well, and everybody else doesn't. We just funded a company that the guy had built some software. He sold it. He sold the company to another company. He worked there for like 6 years. They never touched any of the stuff that he had done. They then were getting acquired by another company who said, "We don't want that. Go sell it. We're not going to pay for it, so go get rid of it." So they went back to him and said, "We gave you $6 million 6 years ago. Why don't you buy it from us now?" And he said, "Okay, I'll give you $100,000. They settled on 600 grand. We bought it. We helped him. We invested with him, bought it, threw it in another company. And all he did was go to the same customers and say, "Hey, send the check here instead." And he'll do 7 million. Knock on wood, he'll do about 6 or 7 million this year. And that was the result of just, failed M&A activity that they never integrated.
How do you specifically, obviously it's a numbers game, like that's the main part of it, but how do you personally uncover opportunities that you see like this one? Hey, we should invest. I feel good about it, growing to something else. Do they come to you? Do you consistently search out these opportunities? What's
Yeah,
that
there's
process?
an entire industry of sell side folks that will bring you as many deals as you could possibly look at. But this is all the result. It should be the result of strategic planning. The first time you think of acquiring a company should not be the result of a sales side conversation where you're like, "Oh, I never thought about that. Let's do it." You should have a strategic awareness of your company, of what you are really good at, right? And what you're not good at. And you need to be thinking in terms of, if I'm not good at that, should I be doing it at all? Right? And if I shouldn't, if I determine that that's just not part of what we do, you should take and get rid of those assets. You should sell those assets or spin them off. So we've done that before. We used to have a line of business in a company that I owned, and it was sort of big enough. It was just a little too big just to shut it down, but we didn't like it. Every time any of the execs had to deal with it, we were furious. Like, "Oh, I can't believe I have to spend my time on this." But the two people primarily that were running that business, they love that business. Total nerds about it. They thought about it all the time. So we went to them and said, "Look, we're going to spin this out. You're going to own it. We're going to keep 50% the first year. And as you scale revenue, you'll buy us down in these chunks, and we'll bottom out at 30%. We're going to keep 30% of the business. But don't, at the end of 12 months, don't ask us for anything, you know? They took that business and tripled it. Now, it was never a massive business. I think they got it up to about 4 million a year. It was never massive, but they ran that thing for a long time. And then like 5 years later, they called and said, "Hey, we're going to sell it for this multiple. Your 30% is now worth what the 100% was when we first did it," or something like that. We're like, "Yeah, yeah, this is great. This is a great transaction." We hadn't talked to them in like 5 years. So
Wow.
you have to know what you're good at and what you're not, and then you figure out what the transaction is. So we weren't good at that line of business. We very well could have said, "Hey, this thing is not scaled enough. We need to go buy some other people that are doing more of this so that we pay a lot more attention to it. We can put management discipline around it and things like that." We could have done that. We could have just shut it down, but we tried to sell it in a way that made a lot of sense. So you should have a strategic plan where you know what you're really good at, right? And in those categories, can you buy other people that are really good at it as well? If not, what are you really bad at, right? And get rid of that and see if you can, on the sell side, give that problem to somebody else.
Yeah. Is this a like a trial by fire type of skill that you learned and that's the only way you figure it out is by failing, succeeding, and kind of hands-on, or is it like a skill that you can learn from someone else and be good at just from shadowing?
That's a great question. I can only answer you because I shadowed my way through it. I was in one of my masterminds 2 weeks ago, and they brought in a speaker, and the speaker was, "Here's how you get acquired by private equity." And they were going through it, and the guy was good. He knew everything that he was talking about, but the rest of the group was staring at me the whole time. They're like, "That's what you've been saying. That's what you've been saying." And it wasn't because I've done so much of it. It's because I've seen so if you want to get practiced at it, talking to these sales side guys and saying, hey, if I were to buy a business, this is what I would look for. Let me see some deal flow. And then just start the analysis process, your internal analysis process on what those look like and what they should do for you and those kinds of things. A lot of deals are self-financing deals. It's really amazing. So if you buy a company and they're spitting off, just to say $1 million a year, that's $88,000 a month. The financing on it's like 15 or 20, depending on the price. That's sort of a self-financing deal, depending on, the other overhead that you have to go with it. So are you really at that much risk if the business can pay for its own acquisition? Those are fewer and far between than they used to be, but I still see some of those from time to time. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Trey, just a couple more questions for you. From a work standpoint, what's your favorite part of your day? Is it just conversations with interesting people? Is it making deals happen? Is it coaching? What do you get the most enjoyment out of between the things that you do?
So, Chris, I'm in such a good place now where I have constructed my day that it is only full of things that I really love to do, which is all of those things that you have mentioned. My life hasn't always been that way, right? But when I hired my EA, Jillian, who I think you've corresponded with, I did so because a friend of mine had hired a speaker to come in to address his company on like productivity and work hacks and things like that. I was so into that. So he said, hey, if you want to bring your company, come on. And she's here for 2 days. And these are the 2 days. And I got the days confused because I was trying to do it myself. And we showed up on the wrong day. I had like 15 people. We showed up on the wrong day. And it was so embarrassing. He was so gracious about it, but I was mortified. I drove immediately back home. I got on Upwork and I drafted this job posting and I had like 40 people and I interviewed every one of the 40 people because I was like, I'm never going to do this again. She was the first one that I interviewed. And then she was the one that I was, gauging everybody else against, comparing against her. So we get to the end of it and I said, okay, I'm going to offer you the job. And I took this breath like I was about to tell her all this stuff. And she was like, okay, good. I knew you were going to do that. And here's the thing, you work for me. And I go, what do you mean? And she was like, you don't touch your calendar again. And when I tell you that you're going to be somewhere, you be there and you be prepared and you kill it. But you don't have to do all of this other stuff. So then she said that, and I was like, what? So then she goes, now tell me what your ideal day looks like. So now I'm feeling like a smartass because, she said something that challenged me. And I said, all right, I go to work at 9:30. I take a 2-hour lunch from 12 to 2 and I leave at 4:30. For 11 years, I lived that life. And she only puts things in my calendar that are coaching, are looking at deals, are meeting people, or are working on real problems that I need to be in the business that the management team has requested me to come in on. Right. And I live my entire day that way. And I'm home at 4:30. Like I still fool around and email and, I'm super into all the Claude code stuff now and that kind of stuff. But, the day that I spend is doing the things that I.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. With your book specifically, Trey, when someone reads it, if there's only one thing they take away from it, what do you hope that one nugget is they take away from reading your book?
Yeah, I wrote the book because too many of us are doing the jobs that we pay for other people to do. And the way that you fix it is to use the matrix that we build in the book, which is pay attention to your culture, your people, and your numbers. And we have structures built under each of those, so that you can analyze your own business to see, do I have the right culture? No. Do I have the right people? Also no. And do I have the right numbers? You'll see. You don't, but you'll see how that is possible. The book it's been its own little thing, man. I thought we'd sell 500 copies of this book and like my mom would buy 200. It's over 100,000 copies. I don't look anymore, but it's over 100,000 copies. And the reason is, and I hear this all the time from people that read it, is I had fallen out of love with my business because I wasn't doing my job. In fact, nobody was doing my job, and I had to get back into it and start doing my job. The other thing that I find super interesting is there's this thing called Secret Mastermind, and there's like 50 Fortune 500 company, like CFOs and CEOs that go to it. They invited me to come, and the deal is you send them the book, everybody reads it, and then they interview the author for basically an hour and a half. So I go out and I was like, this book is like for little businesses, not for these guys. There was one guy in the room that said he didn't think the book had any application to him. All the other guys in the room, 49 of them, were like, I'm taking this back. I'm getting back into my business, that kind of stuff. And then the host pulled me aside and he was like, that guy needs this book more than anybody else, which is why he didn't like the book. So my point in saying that is I think the book has a really wide appeal because the systems that we talk about are just elementally true for every business, but every seed.
No, that's great. And we could spend a whole nother segment talking about systems, I'm sure, and how to implement those correctly. But last question for you, Trey. For you personally, what's a book or two that's meant a lot to you personally or professionally? And what's a book that you love to recommend to others?
I have gifted The Alchemist probably 200 and something times. It's buy 10 or 12 of them at a time, keep them in the office, hand them out to people, send them through Amazon to folks, all that kind of stuff. So that's one of them. There's another book that I won't say he was a friend of mine, but he's a guy that I would run into a lot when I lived in Athens at UGA. His name was Coleman Barks. He was a professor of English, but he started translating Rumi poems. Rumi was a 13th century Sufi mystic, Persian mystic. And so he wrote a year with Rumi, and I gift that book all the time. Men get into stages of their life where we don't feed our souls at all. And I start my day every single morning with a 13th century Muslim poet because it feeds my soul, and I give it to people all the time. And then on the drier side, I love the book. It's called Making It All Work, and it's by David Allen. David Allen wrote Getting Things Done, which I don't think is a very good book. I think Making It All Work is the central unlock for how do we use productivity systems and all of this kind of stuff to actually make sense of what's coming our way, how to handle it. And it's like this judo manual on how to, somebody throws something at you, how do you dodge it? How do you take it? How do you get it done differently? I think it's brilliant. So those are probably the three books that would come top of mind.
Love that. Love that. Well, Trey, man, this has been awesome. I appreciate you
Love it,
taking
Chris. Yeah.
time and providing your insight. And so, man, keep doing what you're doing. Really
Thank you,
appreciate
bro.
it.
All right, good. Appreciate you having me on.